The views expressed on this episode, as with all episodes of Sounds Like a Cult, are solely host opinions and quoted allegations. The content here should not be taken as indisputable fact. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
I don't know a Snape wife. I'll put that out there first. I've never met a Snape wife. I have not interrogated a Snape wife. But the Snape wives are a group of people who feel that they are spiritually bonded to Severus Snape.
What? That is culty in a sort of like fanatical, ritualistic, and borderline delusional way. This is Sounds Like a Cult, a show about the modern day cults we all follow. I'm your host, Amanda Montell, author of the books Cultish and The Age of Magical Overthinking.
And I'm Reese Oliver, Sounds Like a Cult's coordinator and today's co-host. Every week on this show, you're going to hear about a different zeitgeisty group that puts the cult in culture, from astrology apps to cruise ships to try and answer the big question.
This group sounds like a cult, but is it really? And if so, which of our cult categories does it fall into? A live your life, a watch your back, or a get the fuck out? After all, cultish influence falls on a spectrum. There is so much cultiness out there these days in 21st century America, whether you're talking about your celebrity fandoms or your fictional novel fandoms, or when corporate offices describe their employees as a family. But the thing is, not all cultishness is equally bad. This show is here to poke a little bit of fun at human beings' search for meaning these days in the digital age, but also to critically scrutinize which culty-seeming groups out there are kind of harmless or even net positive, and which ones are destructive, even if they might not look like a cult on the outside. Today, we have an overdue topic. We're talking about the cult of Harry Potter. Ha ha! I don't know, it feels like magician-y to laugh like that.
Magician-y, wow. I feel like some Harry Potter fan is already offended.
Oh, God. This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. Whatever new habits and rituals you cultivate in 2025, add some extraordinary hydration to the mix with Liquid IV. You just add it to a glass of water. From acai berry to pina colada to lemon lime, there is a Liquid IV hydration multiplier flavor for you. My favorite as of late is the sugar-free raspberry lemonade. Break the mold and own your ritual. Just one stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Embrace your ritual with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code CULT at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code CULT at liquidiv.com. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. In 2025, maybe you're ready for a plot twist. It may be corny, but as an author, I like to think of every day as an opportunity to pick up the pen and become the narrator of your own life. Therapy can almost be thought of as your editorial partner. There have been quite a few points in my life when I felt like my story was going off course. I don't know what I would have done without my therapist. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, serving over 5 million people worldwide. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/cult today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/cult. I am nervous. I mean, how do you feel, body and mind, going into this recording today?
Body, mind, and spirit. I feel a wee bit scared.
Why?
I want to get it right. I want to be respectful.
Well, I feel like this is a vulnerable group because, and we will analyze this more in depth later, but like, is it appropriate to say that it's a cult with mommy issues?
I mean, yeah, it has been abandoned, or it has gone rogue, so to speak. It has rebelled against their leader, and now they're wandering nomadic people.
Right, they're a nomadic wayfaring peoples, the Potterheads. So I want to be sensitive to them as well. But at the same time, I feel, in the way that I feel Swiftie passing, I feel Potterhead passing.
You are very Potterhead coded. Like, if I did not know you and I saw you walking down the street, I would be like, that woman is a Hufflepuff and knows it. Like,
oh, what? No, I'm a Ravenclaw. Come on.
Okay, my bad. Well, you're a very bubbly gal, you know?
You think I'm bubbly?
You have a very sprite-like presence.
Thank you so much. Is that huffily puffily?
I mean, that's kind of just like the general exuberance is kind of the Hufflepuff vibe that I've gathered. I feel like we should establish this early. I have not read a Harry Potter book, nor have I seen a Harry Potter film in its entirety.
Yeah, which makes sense sort of generationally. But you're kind of Harry Potter coded too.
I read a lot of books as a child, so people are often surprised when I
Right.
am
It's like if
not.
you've read a book, odds are it's Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, wait, you didn't have any friends. There's no way you didn't read Harry Potter. But no, fantasy was never really my thing. It always just kind of felt like a little to the left of what I was into. I was a series of unfortunate events kid. So
Oh my God. That makes a world of sense. Well, they have some aesthetic similarities, like the dark academia.
little children really love a gothic aesthetic. I don't know why, but they do.
Yeah, well, I think especially when it's British. And we're going to get into that later too.
We are.
So, Harry Potter is obviously an empire. It's a cinematic universe, which is a phrase that comes up a lot on this show. But I would venture to argue that at this point, it's also become a culture and even a new religion of sorts. So to do our due diligence, to be responsible podcasters, Reese, could you give us a little bit of background about the magical, mystical, potentially culty wizarding world of Harry Potter?
Harry Potter is a fantasy book series written by J.K. Rowling. We will address Joanne later. Harry Potter has, over the last 30 years, permeated our culture and our consumption like few other pieces of media have, establishing a presence everywhere from your local library to Ulta Beauty. He's everywhere. After Scholastic brought attention to the British series by purchasing US publishing rights for $105,000, the novels became a childhood staple for millions, and thusly people have engaged with the series to their heart's content. It's a world, yes, and that is partially because it has been almost 28 years since the release of the first novel, Harry Potter and the Philosopher/Sorcerer, if you're an uneducated American, Stone. Potterheads still remain one of society's most pervasive and notorious fandoms, which makes this topic long overdue for Slack. As a longtime Slack listener, I'm surprised it's not been done already.
I know, but like, there are a lot of cults. We got there.
We will get to them, people.
I know, like, every time we were getting close to approaching Harry Potter on the spreadsheet, a freaking docu-series about the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders would come out. You know, it's like, we got there. It's evergreen. And the long tail of Harry Potter fanaticism is an element in this cultish recipe that seems sort of like a given on its face.
So, as a millennial, Amanda, what is your relationship to the cult of Harry Potter?
Why does it sound like a slur, the word millennial?
Well, I think because Harry Potter fans fall into the same like millennial fandom cult space that Disney adults do.
Almost. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so yeah, I'm 32. Harry Potter came out when I was in like 4th grade. I was the perfect age to receive it. Let me preface by saying I could read at the age of 9, but my mom would read the Harry Potter books to me so that I could fall asleep at nighttime as like a sweet sort of bedtime story situation. But I, like you, I was not all in. My favorite books in 4th grade were the Chicken Soup for the Preteen Soul books. I was always a nonfiction girly. I always preferred the section on death and dying.
Oh, of course. You need to be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. No, I live my life preparing for death, obviously. But yeah, no, I always just wanted to read short essays about death.
Just light reading. Nothing as intense as Harry Potter.
No. I think I actually love Harry Potter more in theory than I do in practice. The first couple movies are super nostalgic for me. I think they are enchanting and whimsical. That film score, a masterpiece, but I'm by no means in the fandom. What about you, Reese? Like, what is your personal relation to the series?
So I mostly knew about Harry Potter through like the eyes of older fans that I witnessed around me and fan fiction that I like lived next to as I read not Harry Potter fan fiction, but didn't really ever interact with deeply.
It's wild that by the time you were literally alive, Harry Potter was inescapable. It's a religion. Like, it is low-key a worldwide religion.
One of our guests today's podcast entire premise relies upon Harry Potter fanfiction that was published before I turned 5. That's crazy.
That's mental. Okay, so let's quantify this cult a little bit more before we get into our interview, which I am so excited for the culties to hear. This is wild, but these books are the best-selling book series in the world, with over 600 million copies sold worldwide. I'm pretty sure the only book that has sold better is the Bible. A Vox article will be coming back to throughout this discussion today, titled How Harry Potter Changed the World by Constance Grady and Asia Romano, shared a 2011 poll suggesting that a whole ass third of Americans between the ages of 18 and 34 had read at least one Harry Potter book. So that's like the millennial generation. To put that in perspective, the same year, Pew Research found that fewer than a quarter of American millennials believed that the Bible was the word of God. So just to show like how
Cultural insight.
Exactly. Putting the cult in culture. The Harry Potter series, which has now expanded into a veritably generation-defining $25 billion franchise. That's only as of 2016, so holy Patronus. Including movies, toys, theme parks, theatrical productions, etc., has varying degrees of suffocative power depending on your age and interests. The Harry Potter fandom has very clearly grown into something so much larger than the scope of a mere young adult fantasy series, and the number of ways that you can engage with the world of Hogwarts and its students seems only to be growing, even though the last book came out almost 20 years ago. At this point, like, the galaxy that is the Harry Potter franchise and the lore that comes with it is expansive and intimidating. And if you're not a diehard Potterhead, it can be overwhelming to dissect. But dissecting it is indeed something that we're going to need to do today to figure out if Harry Potter is a live your life, watch your back, or get the fuck out. And here to help us do exactly that are two very special figures in the cult of Harry Potter. One is the host of the Potterless podcast, Mike Schubert. The other is one of the hosts of the Fanatical Fix and Where to Find Them podcast, Sequoia Simone. We are so fucking excited for you to hear our conversation with these two. Let's freaking go. This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. Normally, I don't have New Year's resolutions, but this year, the perfect one just popped into mind. And it is eat more fiber and make sure I am hydrated enough that everything is working properly. Do you know what I'm saying? But whatever new habits and rituals you cultivate in 2025, add some extraordinary hydration to the mix with Liquid IV. It comes in these little packets. I like to take them with me when I travel. They come in all kinds of fancy, fresh flavors. My favorite as of late is the sugar-free raspberry lemonade. And when you feel like you need a little hydrating pick-me-up, you just add it to a glass of water. And truly, I swear, there is a Liquid IV hydration multiplier flavor for you. Everything from acai berry to pina colada to lemon lime. Break the mold and own your ritual. Just one stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Powered by LIV Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Embrace your ritual with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code CULT at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code CULT at liquidiv.com. Sequoia and Mike, welcome to Sounds Like a Cult. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Thank you for having us. Hello. Good to be here.
Could you do us the honor of introducing yourselves separately and together? Because you two know each other. You're in the same cult.
Yes, truthfully. It's both the cult of podcasting and the cult of Harry Potter. They're both, yeah. It's where the Venn diagram meets. That's where we live. So hello, I'm Sequoia. I am one half of the podcast Fanatical Fix and Where to Find Them, which is a comedy Harry Potter fan fiction podcast where we read sort of the wildest, wackiest stuff that we can find from pre-2008. We are living in nostalgia. We're dripping. We love it.
We're dripping.
My name is Mike Schubert. I am the creator of Potterless, which is a Harry Potter podcast where I had never read the books before. So it's my first time reading them, was going through the show as an adult. I started when I was like 25. So I came in thinking I was going to dunk on the series and make fun of it and poke out plot holes and stuff. But as I got farther in, I fell in love with the books. And by the time I was done with book 3, it turned into just me loving the series. And then I went on to do the books and the movies and all the other stuff. And then J.K. Rowling became publicly a terrible person. So I hard pivoted into only doing fan-made stuff and trashing her every single episode for like a year. And then I stopped making Potterless to make a show with a similar structure, but about the Percy Jackson books called The Newest Olympian. So you've come to two of the right people. And Sequoia and I were talking earlier just about our like knowledge to try and make sure we are the experts you so desire for this. And Sequoia was like super in the thick of it up until like the late 2010s. And then I was super in the thick of it starting in the late 2010s. So our powers combined, we should know everything. And if we get anything wrong, don't email us.
I don't have an email. Yeah.
Simply keep it to yourselves. Before we get into it, I was just going to ask, in what corner of the cult did you two meet?
We had met at a podcasting convention, not a Harry Potter specific one, but this was like a podcasting convention. It was PodCon, which was in Seattle. I don't even know what year it was.
2019.
But 2019. Okay. So it was at that point, and that's how Sequoia and I met. And I feel like we were operating in a similar Harry Potter space of like loving the stuff, but being okay to make fun of the stuff. And there's certainly other Harry Potter podcasts that were like, we love the stuff and we won't make fun of the stuff. And I think the two of us, I really like that Sequoia seemed to have like a similar approach. And then I think when the JK stuff kind of got bad, it was not hard for me, at least because I had no nostalgia at all. But it was nice and easy for me to pivot into like, oh, she's bad. I have no problem calling her out. And Sequoia's co-host Kim did a very good job of calling out the crap as well. So yeah, I would say Harry Potter podcasting would be our specific corner, but then our like audiences are very much aligned, which I would say is like nice Harry Potter fans who get it and weren't afraid to push JK out of their focus when she started to become very publicly transphobic.
For sure. Yeah, Mike was actually the very first ever guest on my podcast. And then Mike let us come on at one point and take over his podcast for over a month reading the My Immortal fan fiction, reviewing that. So, you know, we've done a lot of different, you know, Harry Potter adjacent stuff together. Yeah, we really have.
Angelic. Okay. Let's get motherfucking into it.
So, first off, what about Harry Potter and the Harry Potter universe makes it cultier than other franchises, in your opinion? Is it the cultural impact? Is there like culty rituals, fan hierarchy? What specifically about Harry Potter makes it so culty?
That is such a difficult question because I feel like there are parts of the fandom that are cultier than other parts of the fandom. You can walk up to like a random millennial on the street and be like, what's your Hogwarts house? And like, they'll tell you. And that's kind of like your baseline person out in the world who like either read the books or saw the movies or did both of those things and likes them. And then you have the people who like have the books, they love the books, buy a lot of merch, they've been to Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you know, but they are not necessarily immersed in the fandom itself. And then I think the culty-ish bits come a lot into play for me as a person who's like deep fandom, was going to Harry Potter conventions in like 2010 era, really in it. When I was coming on this podcast, my first thought was like, the closest thing that I have ever had to a religious experience is a Wizard Rock concert. Like seeing Harry and the Potters live is like my form of church.
I think also what can lead to some of the cultier nature is just like the structure of how the stuff from the Harry Potter universe came out. And obviously this is me coming late to it, so this is me kind of like looking back. But when you have books that are coming out and they're like split up where like one is releasing a year and you're a kid and you like it and you get all into it, you're just all consumed by it and you want to talk about it. It seems like a lot of the books will either have like cliffhangers cliffhanger endings, or like, how does this affect the big picture? So I think naturally, when you're waiting for the next book to come out, you talk to your friends about what's happening in the book. Online forums spring up, podcasts spring up, people start having conversations about it. You do that for all the books. Then the movies are coming out. Then there's speculation about what's going to be in the movies, who's going to be cast, what are the differences going to be.
Ugh.
The movie's finished. Now they're making a play. What's the play going to be about? Okay, the play is out. It's terrible. You know, like, I think there's just like, there was constantly things being brought in. And people had just started as kids having these conversations, and then they got older and older, and they continued to have these conversations. And I think that obviously this is all like before JK's terrible, but like, it's a very welcoming space, and there's a lot of different characters. You can see yourself in a lot of different characters. Even if you're not seeing yourself in one of the main characters, you see the Hufflepuffs and you're like, oh, the chill people, like, yeah, that seems kind of nice. Or the Ravenclaws, you're like, oh, the nerds. So I think it's a world in which a lot of people can see themselves, and I think that it has like a lot of wide appeal. And if you super really want to get into it, it's not that hard to do so. There's so many ways to do it. And then I think that can lead into culty type stuff. But like Sequoia is saying, I think there's good elements. I think there's bad elements.
Something that helps the cultishness grow is the fact that, like, Mike's talking about, yeah, these books are coming out like as we're growing up and And at the exact same time, the internet is coming into prevalence. They were happening at the same time, and nothing else might ever capture that magic in the same way because of just the sheer timing. Exactly.
Yes.
It's just a perfect storm.
So much about this reminds me of full-on Christianity. Like, it starts with the book, and then it just like expands into this immersive, capitalistic, internet-mediated monstrosity with offshoots. And like, if you want to go to, you know, an evangelical amusement park and like watch an actor get crucified and have that experience, you can. Just like you can go to the wizarding world and like watch a simulation of Ron and Hermione and Harry. Like, I don't know.
Flying through the castle for sure. Yeah.
Castle.
And in the same way, yeah, there is like good parts and bad parts to both of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And good people and bad people.
Well, because both religions are humongous.
And if you want to compare it to like a non-religious thing that some people do treat as religion, like, I think there's a lot of overlap with Star Wars as well, just in that there's a bunch of stuff. You can go beyond like the main canon thing and get super into other things. You can enjoy intense discussions if you're an adult. If you're a kid and you're watching Star Wars, it's like, oh, cool, laser swords. And if you're a kid with Harry Potter, it's like, oh, cool, magic wands. Like, there's enough broad appeal to like lots of different age groups and stuff like that. So I think both of them have similar sort of very, very broad appeal depending on what type of person or what type of nerd you are.
It's interesting that you make the Star Wars comparison, because sometimes when I think of a comp for Harry Potter, I think of Lord of the Rings. But what Christianity, Star Wars, and Harry Potter all have in common that Lord of the Rings kind of doesn't, is that like the target is kind of kids.
Yeah.
And so like, if you can capture a youth and give them more fodder throughout their entire life to give them nostalgia. Oh, listen. So like, they're hopped up on nostalgia, and then there's like more doors, more levels along the bridge to total freedom, if we're making a Scientology comparison. If you can give them more and more and more throughout their upbringing, you've got them for life. Whereas like Lord of the Rings appeals to adults mostly, I would say. And that makes it maybe less culty.
Listen, I think I'm contractually obligated while we're talking about what is the most culty aspects, yada, yada, is... Mike, are you familiar with the Snape wives?
I've heard of this, but I have such a disdain for Snape, the character.
We will get to
and
this.
then,
Okay. Great. I'm just glad.
Yeah,
well, we will give you an opportunity to get to the Snape wives. We'll put it that way. I don't intend to get to the Snape wives.
It sounds like a cult episode has a very specific liturgy, not unlike a religious service.
Right.
And we're not to that prayer quite yet.
We start with the origins.
Yes.
We must go back and start the prologue, so to speak.
Start with Genesis.
Yes. Okay. To get to our next question, let's start with some facts about how exactly these books became almost as worshipped as the Bible itself. So, in the late 90s, these books are published in the UK. They do kind of meh. And then there is a Scholastic publishing deal made to publish these books in the US. And it is one heck of a deal. It is a $105,000 deal for United States publishing rights. And because this is such a huge publishing deal, they also pour a ton of money into marketing this US launch. This piece from Vox says, in short, it gave the book many more resources than are typically afforded to the average debut novel from an unknown author. And that decision paid off. As a result, they do splendidly. They take off immediately.
A key thing that was done, you got to give a shout out to whoever at Scholastic made the call to say, you got to retitle the book from the Philosopher's Stone to the Sorcerer's Stone. Americans, we're not wise enough to understand Philosopher's Stone, but Sorcerer's Stone, that's kind of like a wizard, right? Oh, yeah, it's a wizard book. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Especially if you're reading these books as a little school child. It's like all of these magical things happening to mysterious British little school children.
In robes, no less. Classic culty piece of iconography. Train the children to fall in love with black robes. Get them early.
Yes. That really opens up so many different culty doors for you moving forward. And then Harry Potter is also definitely a gateway to other British fandom cults. I feel like Doctor Who, that's a supernatural progression of fandomness that a lot of people undergo.
Yes.
So why do you guys think that the English characters in like this fantasy setting captured American audiences so religiously, especially at this cultural moment in the 90s when these books were coming out?
I think there's something to be said about the fact that like there are a bunch of things in these Harry Potter books that are just like normal British things. And as American children, we did not know that. We were like, all of this is magical fantasy. And they're like, treacle tart is just real.
Legit treacle tart on an episode of Potter. So I was like, oh, they eat all these magical foods like fizzing Whizbees and treacle tart. And then British listeners are like, that's just dessert.
There's also like boarding school culture. It feels fantastical in a way that's like far away from home, but actually not that far away from home.
Exactly. Well, it is both fantastical and accessible because, I mean, before this interview began, we were joking about how the Harry Potter fandom has a little bit of mommy issues, maybe, because of She Who Shall Not Be Named. And I feel like Americans in general have mommy issues with England as as one of their colonies. You know? It's why we like fetishize British accents and British culture. It's like
we have abandoned it. Well, I mean, I guess we left, but like,
we left.
Yeah.
But like we were kind of pushed. I don't know.
Going no contact is hard.
Estranged. I do feel like the general cult of the United States as an offshoot of like the mainstream religion that was England plays into the approachable exoticism of the cult of Harry Potter.
I also think that like the style of the book, like your classic sort of, it's a main character who didn't know that they were magic or important or whatever, and then they're introduced to this world, like that just usually does well, at least in America. Star Wars is that, and Holes by Louis Sachar is that. Like there's so many things that are just like, I'm just a normal person, and then this wild thing happened to me. And I think that format just kind of works. And then when you combo that with like Sequoia saying the magical, literal magic, and then the magical, like, whoa, Britain, whoa, like there's enough going on that can just be fantastical.
Harry is a proxy for every little kid reading, right? And like every little kid growing up in America, I mean, especially of this generation, was told anything is possible for you.
You can get your letter to Hogwarts in the mail one day.
Yeah.
It's very, very American dream coded. Very.
Actually, though, but like British flavored. So like.
So not flavored? Yeah.
Not flavored.
Distinctly without seasoning.
Just shepherd's pie flavored American dream. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Every January brings you 365 new pages to be filled. In 2025, maybe you're ready for a plot twist. Or maybe there's a part of your story that you've been waiting to revise. It may be corny, but as an author, I like to think of every day as an opportunity to pick up the pen and become the narrator of your own life. Therapy can almost be thought of as your editorial partner, helping you write new chapters and create the meaningful story you deserve to live. Oh gosh, there have been quite a few points in my life when I felt like my story was going off course, literally while writing books, but also figuratively in my day-to-day life. I don't know what I would have done in those moments without my therapist. Nancy, shout out. I first learned about BetterHelp from one of my favorite podcasters. I remember them talking about how if you're nervous to find a therapist or if you're between therapists, it can be an option, especially because you can switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, serving over 5 million people worldwide. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/cult today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/cult. So another element that I think differentiates this media empire as cultier than others is the immersion ability, the potential for something Harry Potter to infuse every single corner of a fan's life. There's lingo, there are the Hogwarts houses, Patronus's robes, spells, etc. The lore of Harry Potter is extremely developed and detailed, and there is like a decently high barrier to entry, it seems, in terms of being truly in the know as far as Harry Potter goes, which gives way to certain hierarchies within the fandom. My favorite lens to examine cultishness through is language. I think language is secretly a cult leader's most powerful, albeit invisible tool. And so I wanted to know from each of you, what is some deep cut Harry Potter lingo that a casual fan might not know, but that you think is especially culty in that it can help you clock a true follower?
I would say the OGs sort of know when you ask them what the 3-year summer is. So the 3-year summer is after the 4th book, there was a 3-year gap between books, which had not happened before that. So like Harry left Hogwarts to go to the Dursleys at the end of book 4, and then that summer was 3 years long. And there was like an explosion of fandom during that time. So like if you were like online, you're on the message boards, you're on, you know, the Leaky Cauldron website, MuggleNet, you are sort of using that kind of terminology. And then I would also say the convention circuit would know snitch witches. Mike, you would know snitch witches.
I do, yes.
So Harry and the Potters developed a sandwich that they sold illegally inside of convention spaces so that we wouldn't have to eat that terrible like pizza or nachos or whatever they sell inside those like convention centers at their little like concession stands. It's like so awful. And it's just like peanut butter and honey grams on like white bread, but they would like sell it from underneath like a table inconspicuously, they say. And then it became just like a huge part of this convention fandom.
Yeah, I think what Sequoia's brought up here is that knowing the terminology of the books, right? So there's like, even within that, like your Hogwarts house is one step. Maybe you get into like, what's your Patronus? Then it's like, do you know what your wand and everything would be made out of? Like there's all the things within the book context that you can do. Then beyond that is the next thing with like the 3-year summer. Then it's like, okay, do you know like the big picture fandom sort of terms we talk about? Or if you say something like Drarry, when you're doing like a ship of Draco and Harry together, like some of those terms just for like fans who are a little more into it than just I've read every single book and I know all the stuff that goes down. And then the next step is those things like snitch witches, where it's like, I'm so invested in the fandom that I know all the stuff. I'm going to conventions and I know inside jokes at conventions. So there's lots of different layers.
I can easily conceive of a type of child who grows up only knowing themselves through these Harry Potter devices.
Amanda, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't think anybody did that.
I want to unpack the note of sarcasm I detected. And in order to do that, I want to phrase it like this. Basically, like, what is your Hogwarts house is kind of, to me, like asking someone their astrological sign. It feels like an opportunity to understand someone through this sort of like new religious vibe. First of all, what are each of your Hogwarts houses? How did you figure that out? And then what do you think questions like that and, you know, what is your Patronus and stuff signify to fans on this profound level.
I am very much Gryffindor. I found it out because when Harry Potter released a thing called Pottermore, which when it first came out, it was supposed to be like a game. It was like Neopets, but Harry Potter. Like you're in there, you're doing stuff. And even though I was not reading Harry Potter, it was so hyped up, like it was going to be the new social media. And I was like making YouTube videos and stuff at the time that I was like, I got to get in on this just to make sure if this like pops off, I'm here. So I did it. And they had like this sorting quiz in the beginning. And the way that the quiz used to be is it would ask you a question and it would have 4 answers that were very clearly like each geared to one of the 4 houses. And then you would pick that. And then there would be a follow-up question because it would like narrow it down to 2. And then you'd have the next one. So there was a question that was like, if someone's in trouble, would you save them? And it was like, yes or no. I said yes. And then the follow-up question was, if you saved them, would you want people to know about it? And I was like, oh, well, yeah. And that was the thing where like I had thought I was Hufflepuff because I like pride myself on being a good friend and like trying to get along with a lot of people. So I thought going into this, I was going to be Hufflepuff. When they asked that question, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm a Gryffindor.
I don't think I've met a Gryffindor. This is like a huge moment.
That's so...
Oh,
okay.
wait, Reese, you're
Okay.
a Gryffindor?
I am, and I found that out because, as I've mentioned on the pod before, I went to an arts high school, and there's a whole section of the campus that is portable classrooms that the school administration thought would be really cute if they named it Diagon Alley. They had like a little sign made and everything. And I think it was mostly the work of my math teacher, Miss Rhodes, who on our first day of class made us all take the Pottermore test and then made the seating chart accordingly. And that is how I
Whoa.
found out I was
Agent
a
of
Gryffindor.
Chaos, Miss Rhodes.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, she took it very seriously. I hope she's doing well. There was one of each house sitting at a table.
That's what I was going to ask because, like, it's not cool to divide everybody by house so you're just sitting with your housemates. Like, you want
it
there
was
to
like
be...
you'll work better together.
Oh, that's
if you're
okay. That's way
balanced
better.
evenly.
Good.
Like she had logic.
Agent of improved system, Miss
Exactly.
Rhodes. There we
It
go.
was literally like Enneagram in a corporate office.
Sequoia, what about you?
So I spent my prime sort of like Harry Potter years as a child and a teenager and a young adult thinking that I was a Ravenclaw, and I'm not. I'm a Slytherin. I am 100% a Slytherin. There was like a thing where it was like, oh, the like creative people are in Ravenclaw, you know, and I was like a writer and an actress and I was like, yes, that's where I belong. But like my defining characteristic is ambition, if I'm being real about it. So when I got into like my like mid 20s and stuff, I was like, you know what? Let's embrace this. Let's embrace this about ourselves. And I've been a Slytherin ever since.
Wow. Okay, so I want to go back to the sort of visceral gut response you had to my commentary about
I don't know what you're talking
all
about.
of this Harry Potter shit being a defining identity formation template. Can you explain more about what motivated that response in you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Mike really was onto something saying that, like, the format of the book being like a person who thought they were just a regular person isn't regular. I was always like, yes, you know, I'm actually a witch, and this hairbrush I'm about to pick up, it is a portkey, and it is going to take me to Hogwarts, you know. And I've always wanted like fantastical things to happen around me or to me or whatever. And the way that that book allows you to step into it and to really imagine yourself in the space. And then I started writing fan fiction when I was like 12. So like for me, it was a lot about existing in the space that was not just my regular go to school, take my math test life, and to imagine that it could be something, you know, fantastic.
Yes. So that is culty in a sort of like fanatical, ritualistic, and borderline delusional way, but it seems like nice. You know, like kids are so imaginative and it gives you a place to put that. Did it interfere with your life in any kind of negative way?
I would say no, because while I was like kind of a daydreamy, big nerd with dreams and, you know, I was always talking about Harry Potter, there was also like 20 other kids who were like daydreaming and talking about Harry Potter all the time. So like it wasn't as though there wasn't people for me to be around. It was like the thing where you go to school on your first day and you don't know anybody, but then somebody's wearing a Hogwarts t-shirt and you're like, oh my gosh, I also love Harry Potter. So like I felt it really enriched me. I made friends. I was writing full stories as like a really young person and like engaging critically, which is why why everything that's happening now is so wild. Engaging critically with this piece of literature so young, because I digested it so much and thought about it so much. So like, I don't think it was detrimental to me at the time, no.
And from the other perspective, like for me not reading them as a kid, like I was definitely way more like left out. Like I was the weirdo for not having read them. And this is also like an age group thing. Like I'm 32, so it was like I was prime target audience for this. And I was definitely more of the like, you haven't read Harry Potter? Weird.
And that's the thing is then it creates this kind of, oh, well, everybody's mad that I haven't read Harry Potter, so I'm not going to read it.
Right.
That was my angle on it, was just it was almost out of spite, where I was like, everybody is telling me to read this thing and everybody is telling me that I will like this thing so much that I refuse to engage with it at all. And that's especially true when it's absolutely everywhere. Like especially because I'm 21 and my childhood is like the early 2000s and it's just capitalism everywhere, and there's still Harry Potter stuff everywhere, and I have not known a time where Harry Potter was not everywhere.
Right.
No, it can get a little annoying. Like, I find that some cults tell on themselves so much and they're so intimidating for that reason, because you just don't want to fucking get into it with the followers, that a person might avoid it. Like, I was once like a casual Taylor Swift fan, but I am not anymore because I just don't want to get into it. You know, like, geez, it's too much.
No.
Yeah. I think the good thing that I have found with the Harry Potter fandom, at least once I started to get into it, is that I came into my podcast trying to dunk on Harry Potter. And then I started to love the series and it was fantastic. And I think that level of fan is like very accepting and welcoming, to where it doesn't feel like some other fandoms where you're going to dunk on someone for only being like casually into it. Like if someone knows their Hogwarts house and then you go, what's your Patronus? And they go, what? And you have to remind them what the Patronus is. Like, I wouldn't think that that would elicit a reaction where like a level-headed fan is going to be like, oh, weird.
Okay. Huge green flag.
They would just like understand the level. I thought like my sister was the most intense Harry Potter fan because she would reread the books every single time a next book was coming out or the movie was coming out. And I thought that was my sister being a super fan. That's just like baseline level average fan. So when I started my podcast, all my guests were like, I would call them experts. And then I learned they are not experts because I was like, oh, these are all people who've read the books more than once. That's kind of weird, right? And then everyone's like, they've only read it 3 times? No. So the intensity is for sure there, but I don't think that the pushing and shunning people away because they aren't up to your game is. And then as I made my way more through the fandom, then I was able to have more of those conversations.
That's fascinating. And I want to talk more about what you think has tempered that fanaticism and not made it as toxic as maybe some other fandoms. But first, Reese, could you serve us with a little bit more for 1-1 about who is benefiting from this cult's existence, for better and for worse?
We began to talk a little bit about all of the endless, like, butterbeer flavored capitalism opportunities that Harry Potter has given the world. The most, like, immersive and large extent of which is probably the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios. I have been, and it is fun. I do like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Harry Potter stuff is absolutely everywhere. Like I was saying, if you search for Harry Potter on Etsy, it literally wouldn't even show me a number of how many results exist. Another extent of Harry Potter capitalism is the conventions, which Sequoia, you've been touching on a little bit about. There are enough conventions that there is an article on MuggleNet which will guide you through all of the most popular options if you need help deciding which convention is right for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to attend these conventions and like the cultiest things that you have witnessed at one of them?
We can talk a lot about these because Sequoia's done the full thing. Like she's done fan, presenter to like featured guest at convention.
I have achieved my dreams. I'm just going to say I have achieved my dreams.
Oh my God, the Slytherin paid off.
It truly did.
The full fangirl life cycle.
It's been beautiful, wonderful, and glorious. No, I can sort of start like a little bit later back in the day and then like hand it over to you, Mike. But, you know, the early fan conventions were at their beginnings when you were like, one of the very first ones was Azcatraz in San Francisco. There were a couple of main companies that were running them and they sort of traded off years. So there would be one every year. And those were so fun and they got bigger after the books were done, and they got bigger after the movies were done, which I think is really wild to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people wanted to consume more. They want to be in the Harry Potter space and like talking about it and everything. And like, oh, we don't have any more books. We don't have any more movies. Let's go to the convention.
We have to sustain the shared delusion.
Exactly. And it's so beautiful. And there were some really wonderful years there. But there would be things like I was in a musical at a Harry Potter convention once that was based on the last 200 pages of Deathly Hallows. I played Electo Caro. It's really fun to play a villain. So there's just like all of these wonderful like fan created things happening everywhere where you're like, yeah, the musicals that I saw at Harry Potter conventions are like better than the play that is like running on Broadway currently, you know? So it's just like fun to be in those spaces where everything's like being made by fans.
Super grassroots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People who care about
They're really
it.
fun. I fully agree with Sequoia saying that they got bigger post the books. What I always appreciate about those conventions is that everyone in attendance just felt like they were their truest, purest self. Whether
Yes.
people were going super intense into costumes and cosplay, or if they were just wearing like the robe you get from the Wizarding World or the tie, you could be as intense with that kind of stuff or as not as intense, and it didn't matter. It wasn't one of the things where like you have to wear a costume, but if you want to,
No.
you can, and you can go all out if you want to. And then because of the age of the demographic and the years that I was going to these conventions, you have like parents there bringing their kids. You have like 8 to 10-year-olds contributing in panels where me and other experts are leading it, and then an 8-year-old will like get on the Q&A mic afterwards and be like, oh, actually you misspoke, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, you're 8 and you've thought about this way more intensely. It's just a beautiful, positive space. And I always loved and still love going to these conventions because you can go to like the big stage things where it's like watch the people who were in the movies do an interview, or like watch the musical people from Star Kid do a production of a Harry Potter musical or whatever. But then also you can go to like a tiny small breakout room where it's just like portraits in Harry Potter. How do we think they work? And it's just a back and forth with the crowd. I was like asking all the people, like, J.K. Rowling has nothing to do with this? And they're like, no, Warner Brothers has like actively sued LeakyCon year after year after year. Like, it's
Wow.
that shows you, I
Yeah,
think, the good that the fandom can do is like they can put so much awesome work into something cool. And that just shows you like when this community is channeled for good, they can make a big opening, welcoming space, which makes what J.K. Rowling did wild.
Yes.
Because look at how much good these people do when they read the books about acceptance, being accepting. And then she goes, what if actually I made my
Yeah.
whole brand not being accepting? Bizarre.
Wow. It sounds like such like a wholesome, nice, loving space. Maybe I've just been working at Sounds Like a Cult for too long, but I'm a little suspicious. Like any theories as to why it is able to be such a positive space despite its like size, and usually when things this big have existed for this long, they tend to go sour at some point, but it doesn't really seem like there's a ton of that here. Are there any like toxic pockets with hierarchies or weird us-them dynamics? And like, if so, where?
There's definitely toxicity. I will say, to answer the first question of like why I think it's welcoming, I think it's just because like at their core, the books are about being accepting of other people.
Absolutely.
And then as far as the toxicity, like there's definitely toxicity and it takes shape in different form. And now it's in like a weird space because of the JK stuff. So like I wouldn't know as much about the toxicity of like the pro JK versus the anti JK stuff. But before that all happened, I would get a little bit of super intense, well, actually emails. Like if I got something wrong on the podcast where people would be like so intense. I think you can get into some toxicity with like feelings about certain characters like Snape or James Potter. Like there's very divisive characters that I think can get into some like really intense conversations and stuff. And that could be a level of toxicity. But I think like now, like in its current state, the toxicity is just like people who recognize what J.K. Rowling is doing is transphobic and she's spreading these like awful, harmful, hate speech filled messages. And then people who are, and this is where I think like the only like culty aspect is really there, people who are just like J.K. Rowling can do no wrong. This is actually feminism and it's good feminism. And they're people who just like can't recognize that what she's doing is horrible, whether they agree with it because they're also bigoted or if they just have way too rose-tinted of glasses that they're like, no, JK's good and she can do no wrong.
I do think one of the things that makes it such an accepting space is because there are a lot of people from marginalized communities who found that they could see themselves in these books, who wrote fan fiction and other things so that they could write themselves into this space. So the like convention going fandom that we're talking about is like very queer, like a really very queer space. And like there's just a lot of different types of people there. I think the only toxicity that I have experienced has been when people are just like very passionately tied to the canon of the story, like Mike was saying about like the long emails and stuff like that. And then right now, you know, there's obviously people who are like, I don't care what J.K. Rowling says, I'm still going to exist in the space in the exact same way I existed in the space before. When you're like, we don't all agree about exactly how to go about existing in the space, but a lot of people seem to agree that like we're treating the space differently. We are entering the space differently.
Right. Everyone has a different approach. My approach, once J.K. Rowling made it very clear, was that I didn't want to do anything that like gave her money or influence. Yeah. Even though that she's got infinite money and infinite influence, I just didn't want to contribute. So like I stopped covering anything that was officially Harry Potter branded on my podcast. And if I ever did, like I think I was in the middle of one of the movies, I like donated all the proceeds to a trans charity like the Trevor Project or Marsha P. Johnson. And then I also was trying to like speak up against it on those episodes, but I got to a point where I didn't want to buy anything officially Harry Potter branded because then that meant she would get a cut of it potentially if you buy like Harry Potter Vans or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't want to cover any of the new stuff coming out like the third Fantastic Beasts movie or that new video game. Like didn't want to cover any of that stuff because again, if that does well, then maybe more companies are willing to work with J.K. Rowling and then she can keep doing stuff. But I think one thing that I still firmly believe is like just because she's terrible, it doesn't mean that you have to completely separate yourself from the fandom. If you have wonderful memories from reading the books or talking about them with your friends, these conventions that we're going to, friends that I've made because of Harry Potter podcasts or conventions or whatever, like you don't have to flush all that down the toilet, especially because you look at like the fandom doing things like these conventions where she has no say in Wizard Rock, all these other things. Clearly the fandom doesn't need her.
Yeah.
Yes. So just to back up really quick for some exposition, because this is not a Harry Potter podcast. So right. I imagine there are people tuning in who somehow missed the hullabaloo surrounding J.K. Rowling and her dethronement as the leader of this cult, so to speak. Reese, could you provide a little bit of explanation and then we can talk about it more?
Yeah, I don't want to bring too much attention to specific things that she said because there has been a lot of abhorrent things that she said since 2018, which was the beginning of her public life as scum. In 2018, she liked to tweet calling trans women men in dresses, and ever since then, her irrelevance has become a pundit for hatred, which really sucks because queer baiting throughout the story and underrepresentation of marginalized communities have like long been an obstacle in the fandom that the fans, as you guys have spoken about, have been really resilient in working around and in coming together in spite of and building something. So obviously that was really disappointing, especially considering the millions of dollars J.K. Rowling has undoubtedly made from the support of trans people. So now there is this chasm between the J.K. truthers, which luckily I don't see many of them around, at least. I don't know if you guys see.
You'll see them on the internet because like she'll tweet just this garbage and then it'll still get like 85,000 likes. So like they're clearly out there. And people would hop up all of my replies when I would post any sort of anti-JK stuff, especially when I was like actively doing the podcast. And they would be like, well, if you don't like her, then you should like stop making it your career. It's like, no. She's the one who sucks. I don't have to lose my job.
You're right.
But yeah, I think what Sequoia was saying and Reese, what you're saying is so true about people from marginalized communities seeing themselves and becoming fully aware of their identities through these books. And that's what makes it extra crushing. There's someone that Sequoia and I both know, Jackson Bird, who's a wonderful creator who wrote a book called Sorted, which was kind of inspired by how the Harry Potter books helped them recognize that they wanted to transition and become a man, and made this whole book and everything. And then J.K. Rowling did her trash. And it's like, okay, person who inspired me to recognize I'm trans. Cool. Very cool. And Jackson is a absolute perfect person to talk to about that specific thing. I had Jackson on Potterless to break it down, where I was just like, please, can you, from your perspective, explain why this is so terrible? Of all the people to do this, like the person who wrote the books about you shouldn't persecute people for no good reason, persecuting people for no good reason just makes it suck extra hard.
Yeah. The book about, like, get that little boy out of the closet.
Seriously. You guys, on the other hand.
What's happening?
So I wanted to follow up and ask, it's such a unique situation to have a cult fandom with such a clear leader who then betrays the tenets of the cult and then the followers don't accept it. Like, normally, when a cult leader betrays their own tenets, enough followers will just heed their own loyalty and their own sunk costs to be like, okay, whatever this person says goes. That did not happen here. And I think it just goes to show the power of what the followers and the believers have done with this material and how that has sort of overpowered any role that J.K. Rowling has served this fandom and this franchise. But analyzing Harry Potter through the lens of cultishness, you know, not every modern day cult, but a lot of them do have something resembling a leader or multiple leaders. In the wake of J.K. Rowling's I don't even know how
Fall
to describe
from grace?
Fall. Yeah. Like
Shunning?
Literally like how to describe what happened. In the wake of that, who do you think, if anyone, has stepped in to fill a cult leader role? Is it convention organizers? Is it moderators of fan fiction forums? Like, who's the glue keeping the fandom together?
I would credit the community as a whole. To me, it doesn't seem like there's necessarily like, oh, this person is the one we all follow. I think especially because Harry Potter as a fandom has so many different niches. There's huge Harry Potter YouTubers, podcasters, musicians, fan fiction writers, the convention folks, lots of other people. And this kind of led into why I decided to do what I did. Not because I'm trying to like act like I'm this great person and everyone needs to follow me, but it was like I recognized that I was hosting the most popular podcast at the time and I owed it to people, because there were genuinely a lot of people who were like, I don't get what she's saying. Like, everyone's saying it's bad, but I don't get why it's bad. So I personally tried to like learn as much as I could so that I could speak forward to be like, here's what I learned from reading stuff from trans folks, watching YouTube videos from trans folks, and here's what I've learned. Let me try to pass it along. So I think there were just a lot of different people in the community that like stepped up to the plate, and you had huge things like the Leaky Cauldron website, MuggleNet, you had big YouTubers, Wizard Rock. I felt like most of those people used their platform to try to explain like why it was bad and say like, we're pushing her to the side and we're going to still have our own safe space. So to me, it kind of just felt like a big team effort as opposed to like there's one person sort of leading the charge.
Proper commune energy.
Truly, though, actually, and I think that we all love that. Actually, I think all of the people would love to hear that, because it's also just like so big. We don't have the Pope or whatever, you know, like we're just a bunch of people interacting with a fandom in a bunch of very different ways. So I think for like every individual person, there's probably someone that they look up to in the fandom for whatever reason, but that's going to be different for so many different people.
And one thing I can't believe I haven't brought this up, but like the three main kids from the movie all called her out on it. Daniel Radcliffe repeatedly, Emma Watson repeatedly, Rupert Grint, like they are all out there very profound, whether it was social media statements or interviews, they all very eloquently stated why it was disappointing what she was doing and all that kind of stuff. And like that's huge, because as much as an individual Harry Potter indie creator is going to be, like obviously those people have like a million jillion times more of the influence and knowledge and everything. So the fact that those three and a bunch of the actors and people involved in the movies in different ways, like all those huge mega celebrities stepped up to the plate to also call it out, like that was huge too. And I think that can go a lot farther for some of the more casual fans, because not everyone's going to have someone like a Sequoia or me or a Jackson Bird to say like, here's why it's bad. Someone might just be like, what's going on with the JK thing? And then Daniel Radcliffe has an interview where he's like, this is bad and here's why. Emma Watson says it. That's going to get your more casual fan to recognize like, oh, wow, the guy who played Harry Potter, he didn't? And then of course you'll get the people who are like, he should be grateful and you know, all that kind of stuff.
fine.
But that was huge that they stepped up.
Yes, it would be like if Jesus was suddenly like, you know what? Actually, steal from the poor. Just the poor suck. I hate the poor. And then like some of the saints came
The
forward and they
apostles
were
come
like,
through, and
Yeah,
Peter's
the
like, "Yo,
apostles.
come on,
Amen.
listen to
Exactly.
it from the rock. Let me
Yeah.
tell you."
yeah, like fucking Peter writes a letter to the Trevor Project and is like,
Intervention.
nah,
No.
I'm here for you.
Wow.
Sequoia, you were talking a little bit about how people are turning to different leaders in this wake of a JK-less era. So one of these kind of sub-cults or subgroups that exists that you are very well versed in is the world of Harry Potter fan fiction. Now, the world of fan fiction in general is a vast and ugly one, which while I'm more versed in than I would like to admit. No, but ugly.
Scandal.
I say that from well within it. I would like to know. But Harry Potter fanfiction specifically is an elusive web that I stay away from solely because I find it so intimidating. Can you expand a bit on your relationship with the Harry Potter fanfic world and kind of give a description of how that world specifically can be cult-like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have been writing fan fiction, like I said, since I was 12. And then we started doing this podcast to, really recapture that portion of our youth being a part of this fan fiction space. And it's not smaller than it was. That's a space that just continues to grow despite any adversity, I think something that is fundamentally misunderstood about fan fiction in general, but a lot about the Harry Potter space, is that people either think that it's really silly or it's like all smut. And while like very silly things exist and very spicy things exist for sure, there is just like people who are exploring new stories in this space with new or even existing characters, and they are building those worlds out to several novel-length stories. There are fan fiction writers that are way more prolific than like published authors. And sometimes those things get pulled for publish or things like that, but the fan fiction space is really full of these people who are like dedicated readers to the authors that they love, who are creating these stories that are seemingly never ending a lot of the time.
And this is free labor.
Yes. Yeah.
Cult.
Literally, my best friend's favorite fanfic author is a full-time lawyer. These people are doing it like solely for the love of the game. I
Okay,
admire
first of
it
all,
so much.
it's not very Slytherin to write a whole ass book and get no glory.
I didn't say I wrote a whole ass book.
I would argue there's glory. There's kudos.
There's
Right,
kudos.
there
There's
is
kudos.
glory. It's
Yeah.
right. Glory and money are different.
Very true. And with that, I think it is time. Can you enlighten us about the Snape wives?
I would love to do that.
At long last.
The Snape wives are like an actual sort of cult that grew sort of inside the Harry Potter fandom. And I don't know a Snape wife. I'll put that out there first. I've never met a Snape wife. I have not interrogated a Snape wife. This is all sort of information that we all have secondhand. But the Snape wives are a group of people who feel that they are spiritually bonded to Severus Snape, who is not a fictional character, but a sort of an immortal being that is able to inhabit their own bodies. And they are all married to him. And they do believe that the Harry Potter books were written because Snape inhabited J.K. Rowling and had her write those books.
Wait, they really believe this?
Yes, maybe. I'll say seemingly.
I guess it's really, really hard to confirm anyone's true beliefs.
Right. That's so true.
Wow. And we're speculating. When I hear this, I think these people are probably like ex-Christians who left their home church and needed somewhere to put their religious muscle memory. Because, a lot of the members of groups that we now know as notorious cults like Heaven's Gate and NXIVM or Scientology, or a lot of just like the New Age cults of the 70s, were ex-Christians who became spiritual seekers and found the New Age. And there was like a direct pipeline in that regard. This has so much in common with Jesus that I'm like, are they affiliating with this for the same reason why people joined Heaven's Gate? I wonder.
I think that's a question for yourself. I feel like you two are more qualified.
I mean, I feel like at a certain point, especially now, and you were talking about this earlier, Mike, how it is so far removed now from when this whole thing began and it is still kicking. A lot of it just has to be the fun of being in a cult, right? The fun of participating in it.
Yeah, to me, I genuinely haven't read a Harry Potter book in 15 years.
3
maybe.
days.
It has been years and years and years and years and years since I've read a Harry Potter book. But like, I love the fandom, the community. Like, if it wasn't for them, then, you know, we wouldn't be around making these things and consuming all of the art that is being made around this space. Just wouldn't be fun.
Okay. I feel like we have explored so many of the bounds of this conversation. It might be time to play a little game.
Let's
I
do
think
it.
it's time to
I
play a
love a
little
game.
game. It is actually the most straightforward game I think you will ever play. We are going to give you some cult leader names, and you are going to sort them into a Hogwarts house.
Oh
my
That's pretty
God.
much it.
Okay.
Okay, but these cult leaders, we're not talking about like Keith Raniere and Jim Jones. These sounds like a cult leaders, okay?
Okay.
Better chance that I know who they are.
I'm kind of getting Gryffindor because like everything she's done for the vaccine.
Well, she's really concerned with her appearances, like the gloves,
Mm.
the gloves of skin that she wears.
Oh.
So I feel like that leans Gryffindor too.
And the performing, being in front of the stage, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the bravery of being performing on
Yeah.
a stage.
I think that's right. I think she's got a little bit of Hufflepuff tendency just in that, like, if someone said they didn't like Dolly Parton, I would be very concerned. She's just, like, supremely likable.
Totally.
And I
That's
think
a red
Hufflepuff's
flag.
all
Unproblematic
about, like,
fave.
getting along. So, yeah, I think Gryffindor with a slight Hufflepuff potential in there.
Hufflepuff Rising. Hufflepuff
Yeah, there we are.
Rising.
There we are.
Amazing. Okay, do you think there's like an overrepresentation of Gryffindors?
100% because they're the main characters in the book. And
Yeah,
like,
okay.
this is the fault of the text, but, like, they write so much about
Yeah.
Gryffindor and Gryffindor characters. And, like, they're kind of from Harry's perspective, so I get it.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, this second cult leader, I hope you know who this is. Abby Lee Miller.
Oh, of
No.
course.
I don't. Maybe I
Right.
do.
Those are such different responses.
Living on the dance floor.
You're not familiar with the genesis of JoJo Siwa, Mike?
Oh, I know JoJo Siwa. How does Abby Lee Miller fit into this? Is she her mom?
That's a really good question.
She's
Maybe
her dance
spiritually.
mom.
She's her cult
Oh,
leader.
the dance mom. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
she's her dance mom.
Okay,
Okay, Sequoia, what do you think?
Abby Lee Miller is a Slytherin.
okay.
Yeah.
Feels correct.
Period. End of story. Yeah.
Would bite you.
That's it.
Dead.
Next up, I could kind of maybe for your sake hope you don't know who this is.
Yeah.
Gary V.
Oh, unfortunately, I do.
I don't.
Well, as the representative straight white male in the room,
Exactly.
God.
Enlighten us.
I would say, so it's funny because there's a character in Harry Potter, Gilderoy Lockhart. He's basically like a storytelling snake oil salesman of like, it's all
Yeah.
BS. So I kind of want to say he's like an evil Ravenclaw because Ravenclaw whole thing is that they're
wow.
smart. Gary Vee like sounds
Sure.
like what he's saying is smart, but if you like have enough of a brain, you know that he's just conning
loud and
people
talking
over.
fast.
So yeah, I think he's like very specifically a Gilderoy Lockhart Ravenclaw.
Oh my God.
Sequoia's one of those like self-help, like the business
Yeah.
version, like a Jordan Peterson-ish type, but he's all like
Yes.
businessy
Ew.
and not like Andrew Tate macho.
He's like a marketing guru.
yeah,
He's so annoying.
yeah.
Oh my God. This is why diversity is important. So we can play this game and Abby Lee Miller and
Learn.
Gary Vee can both be characters of discussion.
Yeah.
And then we meet back at the middle with
Taylor Swift.
Oh,
So-
nice. I would think Gryffindor as well for similar Dolly Parton reasons.
This feels very difficult because, yes, she's a performer. So she's got the Gryffindor. However, she has Hufflepuff energy, but
She does.
also she is like one of the most prolific songwriters. Like she releases an album every 12
Well,
minutes.
she also has the Reputation era, which was all snake themed.
it's all snake imagery. Yeah, I was gonna say. It seems
Oh
like
my
she wants to be
God.
person.
Are her different eras in different houses?
That's a good answer.
Well, like she's
Different eras
so
in different houses
bland
is good.
that she doesn't fit into any. Like I think she just transcends them
Well,
all.
she's
She's
a
actually-
chameleon. She's a chameleon.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think her different eras are different houses for sure.
Our next culty cult leader, Elon Musk. Sort that man.
Oh, he wants to be a
Slytherin.
Ravenclaw so bad, and he's
No.
just not.
He's just a Slytherin.
No.
He's just a bully Slytherin. But yeah, he wants to be either a Ravenclaw or a Gryffindor, and he's neither.
Yes.
Okay, this one is another. This is niche, except no, it's not. I don't know. The internet is so large, but
Well, there's background to this. Anyway, go. I'll explain after.
oh wow. Okay, so the last person to sort is Nara Smith.
Why do I know that name?
I'm gonna.
You
Google.
know who Nara Smith is because
Oh.
her husband, Lucky Blue Smith, used to make
Yes.
Draco Malfoy TikToks,
Yes.
but he's Mormon and homophobic, so he got ousted. from
Oh,
the fandom.
Nora.
Yes,
That's
oh,
why you don't
Oh,
know
that
She
is-
was the one that was like, I'm going to make mozzarella
Lore.
cheese, but first I'm going to raise a cow from birth. Okay, yeah.
Oh my god.
Mhm.
I would say, can I actually go little Zag? Can she be in Beauxbaton, the like very like prim and
What?
proper fancy French school where Fleur Delacour is
What
from?
is that?
Yeah.
They just feel, at least in their movie representation, they have the fancy dresses and the nice hats and the flowery, like, and like they have this Vila personality, or at least some of them are like part Vila, which like makes people fall under their spell and stuff. So I'm gonna go
Yeah.
with that, where it's just all of the like, oh,
Mike, you're playing this game
So
so,
I'm very
well.
competitive.
Dang.
Thank you for that, Zag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no winning in this game, but you won anyway. Wow. Incredible. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Thank you for playing our game. This was illuminating and like soothing, I want to say. If folks can keep up with each of you and your work and your, cult, dare I say, where can they do that?
You can find me. I am Sequoia Simone on all the social medias. You can find my podcast, Fanatical Fix, and where to find them, wherever podcasts can be found. I also have another show that's not making new episodes anymore, but it's called But Make It Scary, and there's a good back catalog of that if you like rom-coms and or horror movies. That one's a lot of fun. And then, Mike.
So if you want to listen to the Harry Potter podcast that I made, it's called Potterless. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Then the Percy Jackson one that kind of spiritually succeeded that is called The Newest Olympian, also wherever you get your podcasts. I have some other shows as well. And you can check out my website, which is just Schubs, schub.es for all that kind of stuff. And then if you search Mike Schubert, I'll be on Instagram and Blue Sky and Twitter and all that. But if you really like Sequoia and I together, we are currently working on a new podcast. You can get all sorts of updates about it at patreon.com/professional talkers. Since the two of us are full-time professional podcaster people, we are making a podcast about how to navigate through awkward conversations. Since we have had so many and they've been on the internet publicly for everyone to listen to and ridicule, we've gone through the gauntlet of having every type of awkward conversation. And now we're here to help you go through low stakes, low yikes ones like small talk at a party to big yikes ones like how do I break up with someone or how do I ask for a promotion. So that's called Professional Talkers.
Oh, what a
And
great
it's in
idea.
development.
Thank you so
It's gonna be
much. Okay, Reese. Out of our 3 cult categories, live your life, watch your back, and get the fuck out. Which do you think the cult of Harry Potter falls into?
In a post-Joanne landscape, I think I'm going to call it a live your life. It seems like the people there are having a really good time, and I can't fault them for it.
You know, I made the argument in Cultish that the way that people who are into like the kink community have been described as sexual nerds, people who are into sort of fringy spiritual practices that you might even sometimes call a cult are kind of spiritual nerds. These are just nerds. Harry Potter fans are simply nerds. And it's sweet. And like, I imagine that there are little pockets of toxicity going on that our guests today aren't privy to. But the fact that they're so involved with this world and they, by their own admission, like enjoy roasting the franchise, they're not against doing that. They were open to sharing fucked up shit. And they're kind of just like wasn't Annie as the fandom
Yeah.
exists today. You know what I mean?
It almost feels like it's too large and expansive at this point now. Like, it's too fractured to do serious harm as one cult-like presence, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, so I think like the vibes are adorable, but like adorable vibes alone are not enough to prevent something from becoming a destructive cult. But yes, the fact that it is fragmented at this point is kind of a good thing. So live your life.
Yeah. Live your life.
Live your life, Potterheads. Damn.
Come at your Harry Potter house.
Come at your Harry Potter house. Watch. Somehow the most toxic Harry Potter fans are going to find this podcast.
And you know what? Welcome.
Welcome. Get on in here. Well, that is our show.
Thank you so much for listening.
Stick around for a new cult next week.
And in the meantime,
Stay culty, but not too culty. Sounds Like a Cult was created by Amanda Montell and edited by Jordan Moore of The Pod Cabin. This episode was hosted by Amanda Montell and Reese Oliver. This episode was produced by Reese Oliver. Our managing producer is Katie Epperson. Our theme music is by Casey Cole. If you enjoyed the show, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave it 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show a lot. And if you like this podcast, feel free to check out my book, Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism, which inspired the show. You might also enjoy my other books, The Age of Magical Overthinking, Notes on Modern Irrationality, and Word Slut, A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language. Thanks as well to our network Studio 71. And be sure to follow the Sounds Like a Cult on Instagram for all the discourse at Sounds Like a Cult Pod, or support us on Patreon to listen to the show ad-free at patreon.com/soundslikeacult.